Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Thursday. We're getting ready to record episode number 86 of Mike in the Midwest for our patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast. It's the bonus episode for the supporters of the show. Today, we're talking about field trips from the past. Field trips from the past. Once I get that little buzz out of here, we'll be good to go. I need to get a new mic wire. I say that every week, and I keep forgetting to get it. Okay, let's do this. Hello to everybody who's watching live. Doing this early in the morning because I have some stuff to do this afternoon. All right, let's do this. Episode 86, field trips. Oops, let me get this ready. Let's see here. Let's go with this. Okay. We are. Hello, Herschel and Margie. Okay, here we go. I get that frog out of my throat. That's what happens when I do this show early in the morning. Already on my third Coke Zero, though. So I'm caffeinated. Oh, no. Riley just went for the birthday cake that plays music. Oh, goodness gracious. Riley. Come here. Sorry about that. Hang on one second. Come here. Give me that birthday cake. Come here. Nope, she's not dumb. She's taking it away. Okay. Hopefully the mic doesn't pick that up too bad. All right, let's do this episode 86, and I'll tell you why I picked this topic, but we'll talk about what's going on here first. Then we'll go over feedback from last week. Then we'll go over this week's topic, all in 30 minutes. Here we go. Welcome to episode number 86 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. My name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast, but you know that because you wouldn't be here if you didn't listen to the Be Our Guest podcast and you weren't a fan supporting us here on Patreon. So I don't know why I do the introductions every week, but I just like to do that. I think it's the right thing to do. So how are you doing? I don't ask you that enough. So give me your feedback, right? I can't hear you, but I hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing great. And, I like doing these shows on Thursdays because we're almost to the weekend. You can taste it, right? And this is one of those weekends where last weekend was Super Bowl weekend. Everybody got to have a Super Bowl party, whether your team was in it or not. I had no dog in the fight, but we got to go over and have some fun with my brother and sister-in-law, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house, and my little nephew who's 4, Austin. He's awesome. So we just, just like everybody else, I think in the country, we got to order some wings and have little smokies wrapped in bacon and some nacho dip and all the stuff that is terrible for you. But it was a good excuse to watch little football on the big screen TV, talk about the commercials. I don't know if you guys do this where you live. I think a lot of people do though, because I was getting some feedback from a picture I posted on Instagram. Do you guys do those little I don't even know what it's called, but it's the squares for the Super Bowl where you put, and maybe if you're not into sports, you might not even know what this is, but what happens is you take a grid. It's a 10 by 10 grid. So there's 100 squares. And on one side, you write the one team's name. So, like, for example, in the Super Bowl, you'd write the Rams on one side, on, say, the vertical side. And on the other side, on the horizontal side, you would write the Bengals. And then everybody, now you don't put the numbers in yet. Okay. So you don't put any numbers in yet. So then everybody signs in randomly in these squares. You can buy them. And like what you do is like you put in money. It's not really gambling, I guess, but I guess kind of it could be. It's like more of a thing of chance. It's more of like a lottery. So you sign up for like, you might buy 5 squares. Maybe each square is $5 or, a buck. I don't know. In our family, it's super cheap. We did it as like Pam's family. She has a big family. So, and they always do this every year. My family doesn't do any of this stuff, but hers does. And so her sister organizes this. And so, they just randomly write, our like PR, like for Pam Rallman. She's got like 5 random squares. And then after everybody fills it in, after all 100 squares have been sold, what happens is then they number along the sides 1 through 0. I guess 0 through 9 is what it goes each way. And then you look at the last number in the game at the end of each quarter and at the end of the game. So, for example, if there is we won the first quarter. So we had like Rams. I don't even know what the score was, but for example, we had like the Rams with a 3 at the end. We had the Bengals with a 0 at the end. So if it was 13-10, that's how we won. And so you get like a portion of the funds for that time. So it makes it kind of fun to watch the game. I know some people do like real betting, which would make it super stressful. That was not super stressful. It's just kind of a fun way to watch. Oh, who has this? And then you can kind of see because everybody gets a copy of the little squares game, and we can see, oh, my mother-in-law is going to win, the second quarter, except for the fact that the holder missed the extra point. The ball slipped through his hand. They didn't kick the extra point, which is always a given. And so because that little extra point was missed, my mother-in-law missed out on like $50. And, but we always joke because my mother-in-law has great luck. She always wins at the casino. She wins in bingo that she goes to with her sister. So this was like the first time the odds did not go in her favor. So we kind of joked about that. But, it's kind of one of those fun things. I don't know if you guys do that in your part of the world. I don't know if that's like a Midwestern thing. I don't think it is because a lot of people on Facebook were saying, yeah, I won. I know I saw the Lappins won. I saw that, Dawn Scott was playing that down there. A lot of folks said that they were doing this, but they're down in the Carolinas. So give me some feedback. Like, is that a thing where you live? Do you make it more fun by doing this squares thing? I picture kind of being kind of Midwestern. It kind of seems like a like a Hoosier kind of thing, but I don't know. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. It just seems like a Midwestern way to kind of gamble or something. I don't know because it's not very high tech, but that's what we did. For the Super Bowl, I was telling you that my dad was out there doing the radio for the Rams. I posted this on Twitter. I don't know if you follow me on Twitter at BRGuestMike, but a lot of folks think the Super Bowl is so glamorous, right? And it is. I mean, it's very glamorous, but my dad is very blue collar. And for the Super Bowl, you would think because he runs the entire Rams radio network. So what I mean by that is he goes into the booth every week. And when he goes, say when they play the Vikings, he goes in and sets up the booth from scratch. He basically just has like an empty booth and goes in. He puts in the mixer, he puts in the mics, he puts in all the cabling, everything. Like in his feed actually is the feed that NFL Films uses for like their highlight films down the road, like for archive purposes. Like they use his feed every week. They record it to like a basically kind of like a little Zoom player, like a little archivist comes in and gets the feed every week. Anyway, so he has this whole setup that he uses. Now you would think the Rams or somebody else owns this equipment. And this is all my dad's stuff because he's very particular in how he does things. So he has this stuff that stays in LA mostly for the year, and then it gets shipped to the away games, a lot of the stuff. But at the end of the year, obviously, he wants to bring it home. It's his gear. So during the playoffs, and he's scared to ship things. He doesn't want to ship things as little as possible for a couple of reasons. One, my dad's kind of cheap like me. He doesn't want to pay. I think it's like $800, $900 to get it shipped back to St. Louis. And he's scared it would get broken because this stuff's all, very delicate, microphones, mixing boards, stuff like that. So, for example, when the Rams played the down in Tampa, when they played in Tom Brady, what ended up being his last game in the playoffs, my dad was like, well, if we lose, my gear would have to get shipped back from Tampa to Los Angeles and then from Los Angeles back to St. Louis. That'd be a pain in the butt. So my dad ended up driving to Tampa, his little van. He has like a 14-year-old cargo van, mini cargo van. He drove to Tampa in case they lost. He could just throw the gear in the back from Tampa, drive home and have his gear. Of course, the Rams won. So then my dad knew the Super Bowl was the last game, right? It's the last game no matter what. So he drove this past week out to Los Angeles from St. Louis and down through Texas, Highway 40 through New Mexico and so forth. Got out there. My dad's real, again, frugal. He packed sandwiches, he was eating Cheerios when I called him on the road, and got there and, did his thing and, set up the thing. He got to stay in the team hotel the night before the game, which was kind of cool, he said, and set up the booth. And he said he worked super hard during the Super Bowl, even harder than any of the other games during the year, because the pregame, obviously, for the Super Bowl is definitely longer than a normal week. He had to work during halftime. They had a lot of stuff going on during halftime. I asked him, like, did you see the halftime show? He's like, I saw that they rolled in a cool looking car, because my dad's a car kind of a, he's 68. Like, he saw those old vintage cars that Snoop Dogg had in front of the stage. Like, those cars were awesome. He's like, I have no idea what they had to do with what the rappers were using. I was like, I think they were in the videos back in the day. He's like, I love the cars, but he's like, I was working so hard. He's like, so my dad usually goes down and gets a quick like bite out of the press box during halftime, but he had to work, so he didn't get to eat during pregame, halftime. Postgame obviously was a nut house for them because they won. The Rams won, so they're doing all kinds of interviews. They were doing locker room stuff that he has to run the mixing board from that. But he had a good time with that, so he was very, very excited. He got to go down to the field to get all the stuff at the end of the game. So he was down there with some of the players and so forth. They had to wheel the stuff. He had some crazy stories about wheeling the gear out of the stadium afterwards. They had to wheel the gear a mile and a half. And DeMarco Farr, who was one of the Rams' most famous players from St. Louis times, actually helped him wheel the gear to the bus. They ended up taking a wrong turn and got on some like gravelly road, and then the gate was closed, and they finally apparently commandeered a bus, like a motor coach that wasn't even the Rams, but they did let them hop on and took him to the team hotel. So he got his gear back to the van, and my dad ended up getting to go to the Super Bowl party for the Rams, which he said he wasn't paying attention because he was so tired from the day, because it took place obviously Sunday night late. He said he was playing on his phone. He was exhausted because the morning started super early and he'd been going. And he thinks that where the party took place was a big hangar at LAX. And so they took him in. He said it was crazy, big video screens, all, these alcohol stations, anything you wanted to get, all kinds of crazy fancy food stations everywhere, entertainment, DJs, fancy people. Probably my dad was probably in there with like really like big stars. And my dad is like he's like me, but more like down to earth than me. Like, seriously, he's just as blue collar as you get. My dad said, I was so tired. I really didn't want to be there, but when are you gonna get to go to a Super Bowl party? So he went. And again, he was driving home the next day. He was driving home. He left at 4 in the morning the next day to drive back to St. Louis, 24-hour drive, I think it was. So he knew he had to, get some rest, but he wanted to go to the party. So he does. My dad's not a partier. My dad does not drink alcohol. My dad doesn't eat fancy food. So what he told me is like, I'm starving. So he's like, I go around to all these food stations, all fancy stuff, seafood. My dad doesn't eat seafood. My dad doesn't eat anything fancy. He's like, I finally found a station. They had corn dogs. So there was probably like Disneyland. Yeah, I wouldn't even think it, but it was probably like a Disneyland station, because they probably had like a California theme or something. So he's like, I got 2 corn dogs. And he's like, I was so hungry that I ate those 2 corn dogs. He's like, I did a lap around the room and I came in from the other side and I got 2 more corn dogs. And he's like, and then I left. I went back to the hotel, went to bed, got up in the morning, headed back to St. Louis. So that was my dad's real glamorous Super Bowl story. But yeah, they won and he's excited. Well, will he get a ring? The broadcast team usually does. They said he would. We'll see, because that doesn't usually happen until the fall. So we'll see. And there were tens and tens of people out there, I think, yesterday for the big parade. So good on LA. And they were not even in the top 10 market for viewing the Super Bowl, which a lot of cities in the Midwest were. Milwaukee, Kansas City, Detroit, Cincinnati obviously was number 1, but yeah, LA, way to represent. Yeah, I'm just kidding, but it is kind of the truth. St. Louis would have been number 2, but what can you do? Anyway, that's this past week. Real quick, yesterday here in the weather, I love giving the weather. In St. Louis, it was 65 degrees in St. Louis. Today, as we're recording, Mallory's upstairs on a snow day. And right now it's only raining outside, but it's going to change to sleet within the hour. We're supposed to get 3 inches of snow by the end of the day. That's St. Louis for you. Now, here's the funny thing is, though, my wife, Pam, is at school. The district next door to her, Hazelwood, which is the district that usually always does the same thing as her district, they had an AMI day, which means teachers did not have to come in. They just had to use the computers to do virtual instruction. So to say my wife was a little upset this morning when I came up off the treadmill is an understatement. She was fired up that she had to go in, because the thing is, what they're saying for the storm we're having today, it's one of those that's worse than actually a big snowstorm. It's been raining all night, and it's going to turn to ice and freezing rain at lunchtime. And those are the days that the commute that usually takes you 25 minutes will take you 3 to 4 hours, because it just, everybody locks up, the roads freeze up. And this is going to be a nightmare this evening and this afternoon. So I told my wife, like, and her kids only have a half day today because the teachers have professional development this afternoon. I was like, just when the kids leave, just get out of there. Fake like you're sick, break a leg, whatever you got to do, just leave. Because if you don't leave, you're going to get stuck there and you're not going to get home for like 3 or 4 hours. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it was 65 yesterday. It was awesome walking the dog. Like, yeah, it was super windy, but it was great. Yeah, tonight we'll probably have 3 inches of snow on the ground. So everybody heading east, it's coming your way. Have fun with that. All right, so let's get to the feedback from last week's show. And last week we talked about the Putt-Putt Fun Center, and this is a place that I loved hanging out. So let's hit some feedback here, and then because I want to talk about a fun topic that I thought about today on the treadmill. So Jennifer Perry came in with some feedback from last week. Thank you for being a patron, Jennifer. I appreciate it. Hey, Mike, congratulations to the cheerleading team. I hope your dad got his Super Bowl ring. We'll see. He got the victory. I don't have any feedback on putt-putt, but I wanted to comment on the topic of snow days. We're in central Illinois, and the blizzard left us with 14 inches of snow. My husband is the principal of a small Lutheran grade school. Because of the storm prediction, Wednesday and Thursday of blizzard week, we already changed to virtual learning days on Tuesday. Due to blowing and drifting snow, school was also closed on Friday, and they got a real snow day then. I agree that snow days are important for kids. I have great memories of those rare snow days, both when I was young and when my kids were. By the way, my mom and I missed the blizzard here as we were at Walt Disney World until February 3rd. We had a beautiful and delicious lunch at Geyser Point, lakeside, in 70 degrees as the snow fell at home. Thanks as always for the great shows, Jennifer. Okay, that brings up a great point that Jennifer has here. And thanks to your husband for being a principal. That is a tough job. How many times have you been on a Walt Disney World vacation this time of year where it doesn't, if you're from the South, it probably doesn't happen, but this has happened to me a few times, especially as a runner, like being down for Princess or Marathon or something like that, where back home they're getting like the worst weather and you're at Walt Disney World and you walk out and it's like a 75-degree sunny day. I mean, isn't it the best? It's like some kind of like bonus to your trip, like that it's just miserable at home. Everybody's buried in snow or the wind chills 10 below. And you're in shorts and like you're sitting at Geyser Point, like like Jennifer was. It almost, I mean, it's are it is are you mean for enjoying that more? Because I do enjoy it more. Like, I am glad that I'm not in the Midwest. I'm glad that I'm not in St. Louis when it's snowing or sleeting or and everybody's fighting a terrible wind chill. Like, I'm just like, oh man, did I get so lucky or what? Jennifer brings up a great point. When you are from this part of the world and you get to dodge the bullet on one of these miserable like weekends where it's just bleh, yes, it's awesome. So Jennifer, thanks for that feedback. That's a good point. So let me know if you share my sentiment. Does it make your trip better when the weather back home is miserable? All right, Trisha Helwig, thank you so much for being a patron. She always hangs with us on the live recordings too for the Be Our Guest podcast. She says, I'm not dead. Between vacation, holidays, and sickness, yeah, I was a triple threat, viral bronchitis, an ear infection, and COVID at the same time. I finally caught up on the podcast. Wanted to throw in some thoughts on previous episodes. I give hashtag Scotty G 2 thumbs up as a new member to the team. I love his energy. When you guys were talking about intersections in fancy Mexican restaurants, I recall ours was Chi-Chi's. Yes, the salsa company. They had the best server who would dance between tables. He could put Mickey and friends to shame at Chef Mickey's. Our local geography in suburban Wisconsin is pretty boring. The only thing I dug up in my yard was a rusty matchbox tractor. But my husband lived in the country and found countless stone arrowheads. He pretended he was a character from the book The Indian in the Cupboard. You know what? I've never read that book or seen the movie. I need to do that. I know it's a classic. And here's the thing. As an elementary school teacher, I was terrible because I've not read a bunch of the classics. I still and I never did, which I should have, and I feel terrible for that. She continues on. Can't say I have many tips for work. Charting in a hospital, every note has to be individualized, but keep passing on tips for Apple devices. I've never heard of Sidecar before. I probably have one of the smelliest childhoods. Two distinctive smells I recall are manure. I'd visit my grandparents for lengths of time during the summer on their pig farm, and odd combinations of new car smell mixed with sweat and stale popcorn, also known as our indoor soccer complex, a place I spent most winters at. Oh my gosh, Trisha. Okay, you're talking about indoor soccer places. I spent so many times, both as a young, like as a 7 to 10-year-old, I spent it at the same place. When I was a young kid, it was called Twillman's Indoor Soccer Complex. With if you're a soccer fan, Pat Twellman is like a huge soccer guru and one of the greatest soccer players in U.S. soccer right now. But he's from Florissant, where I grew up. Like his family started one of the first indoor soccer complexes around. And my buddy, again, there was a lot of Catholic people where I grew up. I was Baptist, but the Catholics, everybody that was Catholic played soccer. I played baseball, but he played indoor soccer all the time. And I didn't play indoor soccer. He did. And on Saturday mornings, I would go watch him play and we'd go up to Twellman's and it was awesome because it had video games. His mom was, she liked to drink a little bit. So she'd go up to the bar on Saturday mornings, even, yes, and get her beer. And the bar at Twellman's looked down over the soccer field. But I just remember it had a distinct smell. You're right. Indoor soccer complexes had a distinct smell. God, now you said that I can smell Twellman's. And then Paige played there and I coached there. I coached Paige's soccer team there for years later on. Very cool. And Trisha continues, Portillo's is good, but it's got nothing on Wayne's, a local burger and shake place where the servers come up to you on roller skates. And but I think Wayne's is where Ricky went for I'm pretty sure that's where Ricky went for Valentine's Day this past week. And they come to you on roller skates. That's my jam because you know me and roller skating. Someday I'd love to own a skating rink again. And finally, I recall our local mini golf park had a giant slide too that was next to a movie theater. On a good weekend, we would get a game of mini golf in with a quick slide and then cross the parking lot to the theater. Sorry for the long post. 2 months of catching up. Trisha, I love long posts, and that was awesome. I'm glad you're feeling better. Wow, you survived bronchitis and ear infection and COVID. Whew. I'm just glad you're with us still. Trisha, hope you're doing better. Hope you're smiling. And finally, my buddy Peter up in Canada, who is suffering just like me right now. There's 3 people that are suffering that I know right now. Me, Peter, and Matt Parrish. We love our baseball. And right now, pitchers and catchers should be doing fielding drills, should be throwing bullpens, and they're not. We got to get this figured out quick, right, Peter? So your Jays can get going, my Cardinals can get going, Matt's Royals can get going. Let's go. Peter says, I still have nightmares when I think about the Iron Mike pitching machine. I was a lanky right-handed pitcher and 4th outfielder on my team. I could pitch, but I couldn't hit. I spent many days/hours in the Iron Mike tunnel. It always scared the crap out of me. I'm sure it was only 70 miles per hour max, but it seemed like 90 to me. I never did get better at hitting, no matter how long I spent with that monster. Keep up the great work, Mike. I hope Peter laughed at my story of my buddy Ryan, who got drilled twice at putt-putt by that Iron Mike. that he was bunting. He fouled the pitch off himself. He started hopping around. Yep, hopped around right on top of home plate, and then that thing drilled him right in the back with a second pitch. I'm like, Ryan, get out of there. We dragged him out of there. I mean, it was like an Adam Sandler movie, or like who was the big guy? Something like Chris Farley would do. I mean, I'm not kidding. You would, I swear you think I'm lying, but you had to be there. This did happen. He got drilled twice. And I mean, it was in a hard pitching iron mic machine. Oh my God, it's funny. One of the funniest things I've seen in my entire life. Funny for me because it wasn't me in there. Funny because my best friend was getting drilled twice by the iron mic. Anyway, okay, today's topic. I hope you guys enjoy these shows. I try to make them as fun as possible. Just little throwaway shows. It's a thank you. Every week it's a thank you for supporting the Be Our Guest podcast on Patreon, because it really does help us keep everything going. Okay, I was thinking about this on the treadmill this morning. Earlier this week on Valentine's Day, I posted a picture of when it was before my wife and I were married. We were just starting to date. And it was when we were both sixth grade teachers in Wedgwood Elementary School. We taught next door to each other. She was Ms. Bullington. I was Mr. Rahman, obviously. And one of the things that we did as teachers is we took our kids every year on a field trip skiing. We went skiing. Now, we didn't go skiing like you see in the Olympics right now, but there is a place, and it still exists in St. Louis. It's called Hidden Valley. And what it is, in the summertime, it's a golf course. But in the wintertime, they have these snow machines, and they cover the golf course, a very hilly part of St. Louis. It's kind of out to the west of downtown St. Louis. It's not really the Ozark Mountains, but it's kind of like the beginning of the foothills. And they cover it with snow. And if you're in Colorado or even Wisconsin, these are not big hills. But for kids in St. Louis, I mean, it's a hill. So they cover them, and there's a couple of ski lifts, and there's like things called magic carpets that you put your skis on. You hold onto a rope, and it pulls you to the top of the hill. Anyway, it was a 1-day thing where our kids could go and learn how to ski. And he didn't become, Peekaboo Street or anybody like that, Michaela Schifrin. You didn't become anything like that, but it was our chance for our kids to get exposure. And again, remember, we taught in a very urban, low socioeconomic district. We taught in Ferguson, Missouri. So our kids didn't have a lot of opportunities to get to do things like this. So it was very cool that we got to go out to West County, a good part of St. Louis, and get to ski for 1 day. And they would teach our kids like how to put the boots on, how to do the bindings. And then we'd take them out on the small hill. Our students never got to go on the ski lift because that was like a bigger hill where when you got to go down this hill, you would go fast if you didn't like snowplow. If you just went straight down like a dart, you would really get booking and you could hurt yourself. So our kids typically did not get to go down the big hill. I did my last year of teaching there. There was a girl, Miranda, who's now married and doesn't have kids, but she's married and all, and great life. And I follow her on Instagram, friends with her family. She had been to Colorado many times by the time she was in sixth grade. She was a great skier. So I told everybody else, I'm like, I'm going to take Miranda on the ski lift. We're going to go down the big hill. I'm going to get a lift ticket. So we went skiing and we did a good time. Because I wanted to just go down the big hill. So I was like, I'll take Miranda. We'll ski. So we skied and did down the big hill a few times, which was awesome because I didn't have to hang out with all the kids that were just falling down on the magic carpet, tripping each other at putting skis on kids all day. The other teachers did that. So we had a good time that year. But anyway, back to what I want to talk about. That was a cool field trip that we took our kids on. And I'm going to do another show later on about some of the field trips that we took our kids on as teachers when I was a teacher. But, and I'll save a story about that because I thought, well, let me just tell you that story real quick about the Hidden Valley thing. So I student taught at Wedgwood Elementary in second grade. So when you're finishing your degree as an elementary school teacher, the way it worked in our where I went to the University of Missouri St. Louis is you would do 7 weeks student teaching in one placement. Then you had a week off where you would write a reflection on that location. Like, what did you learn in that 7 weeks? And then you do 7 weeks of student teaching in a second school. And then you would do another week reflecting, and then you were done. That's how it went. It was called 7171. So my first 7 weeks was teaching second grade at Wedgeville Elementary. That's where Pam taught sixth grade. Okay, so she was down the hall. I didn't know her obviously then. So I taught second grade there, and fell in love with this school. The school was awesome. The teachers were great. The principal was great. The parents were great. The students were great. I just loved it. This was the best school ever, Wedgwood Elementary. I wanted to be there. As soon as I student taught there, I didn't want to teach anywhere else. So I did my 7 weeks there with Mrs. Jasper teaching second grade. Mr. Rallman, big old 6'3" guy teaching second grade. Loved it. Did my reflection week. Then, and I always wanted to be a sixth grade teacher, so it shocked me that I really kind of did like teaching second grade, but it wore me out. Then I I went over to teach sixth grade in the neighboring student taught in sixth grade in the neighboring school district where I graduated from, which is where I thought I wanted to teach in Hazelwood. And it wasn't what I thought. It was in a brand new school. I thought it was everything I thought I wanted going in. And I didn't like it as much as I liked Wedgwood. Anyway, I ended up going back. I subbed for sixth grade at Wedgwood one day, I remember, before I got my job. And it was subbing for the teacher next door to Pam's class. It was Mrs. Austin, which ended up being my class the next year because she got pregnant and I took that class. I got hired in that job. But I remember I was teaching in that room. It was about December or something. It was right after I graduated. And the kids were telling me, yeah, we're going skiing tomorrow. I'm like, you're going where? I'm like, shut up. I'm a sub, but you're not lying. Whatever. I'm not buying this. Like, come on. I'm a sub, but I'm smart. You're not pulling this on me. Like, no, no, no. We are going skiing tomorrow. We're going to Hidden Valley. And I knew Hidden Valley because we used to go there. The guy who owned the skating rink, I've talked about working at spinning wheels. That's where we would go every year for our work party. He would pay for us to go skiing and then buy us all pizzas at Peroni's Pizza that night. Cause skiing was expensive. Skiing was like $80 for like a lift ticket and your ski rentals and all that. So he would pay for us all to go skiing, and it was awesome because we all liked it. We're all skaters. We like skiing. So like, we're going to Hidden Valley. I'm like, shut up. That is not a field trip you're going on. Like, no, no, no. We are going. So I went over to Pam's room. I'm like, Ms. Bullington, these kids are all telling me they're going skiing. Yeah, we are. We do it every year. We're going skiing. I was like, dang, that's pretty cool. Well, so ended up, we did that every year. It was a really cool thing. Anyway, so today's show is not about the field trips we took our kids on as teachers. I want to talk about a couple of the field trips when I was in school. If you were in school in St. Louis in the 1980s, you probably went on these field trips. Okay, and you might even guess them. Even if you're from Wisconsin, California, Arizona, Florida, wherever you're listening today, Texas, you might guess where you go as a kid in the 80s as an elementary kid. Now, first, there's a few. You always went to the Arch, the Gateway Arch. If you think of St. Louis, you probably think of the Arch, right? 600. You might not even know this. Fun fact, the Arch is 630 feet tall. It's also 630 feet from leg to leg, from the north leg to the south leg. You might not know that. It's kind of an illusion, but now you know. You can use that on people. It's exactly the same from one leg to the next as it is tall, 630 feet. Another fun fact about the Arch, no buildings in downtown St. Louis can be taller than the Arch. So no building can be taller than 630 feet. Okay, so here's something we would go. So every kid, usually around fourth grade, would go down to the Arch. And if you don't know, there's a museum underground under the Arch. And when I was a kid, it was all about Lewis and Clark, and it still is. Kind of about Western expansion, and there was a movie about building the Arch and all that kind of stuff. It was awesome. I loved it, and they've redone it, and it's supposed to be even better. I haven't been there since they've redone it, but it's supposed to be awesome. I would highly recommend still today going down to the Arch, but every kid went to the Arch. And the thing is, you would go up to the top of the Arch. Now, let me tell you about going to the top of the Arch. You might think, if you've never been up in the Arch in St. Louis, and I haven't been up into the Arch probably in 30 years, since I was a kid, probably. I haven't been, I know I haven't. Well, maybe I've been up once since I was an adult, but I think I went up with Paige. Going up in the Arch is like going up into space in an Apollo capsule. So the Arch is obviously curved, right? The Arch is curved. That's the shape of the Arch. So you get in this little capsule thing, and it holds, I think, like 10 people, but it obviously doesn't go straight up like an elevator. It has to kind of curve as you go up, and it goes as you get up to the top, and it kind of walks itself. It kind of like crawls, and it takes a little while to get up there, and it's kind of in a really little capsule-y confined space. So if you're claustrophobic, it's not a good idea. And then when you get to the top, obviously you can look out over the city and you look out over the river on the other side, over Illinois. You can hang out over these windows. It's pretty cool. It's a really neat sight. But and then obviously when you're done, you get on the other side, and the little elevators, little capsules take you down. But if you're claustrophobic, you probably don't want to do that. But every kid did that as like a fourth grader, third grader, kind of every kid in St. Louis went in the arch. Okay. Now the arch wasn't the big deal. The cool thing was during your arch field trip, every kid in St. Louis, you would have lunch at the Riverboat McDonald's. Now, this is something you probably don't know unless you're from St. Louis. And if you're from St. Louis, I guarantee you probably went here if you're my age. So it was like a rite of passage. My grandma would take myself, my sister, and my two cousins there all the time. Okay, so when we were kids, we had a floating McDonald's down right on the river, right on the river, right in the shadow of the arch. So right where the arch is, like in that little section of the riverfront, there was a lot of stuff going on when I was kids. There's not anymore, but there used to be. So you would eat lunch, and literally it was a big old like refurbished. It almost looks like the Liberty Bell at the Magic Kingdom, but it was huge. It was way bigger than that. And so it was a full-on McDonald's. You could get whatever you wanted, Happy Meals, chicken nuggets, Big Macs, whatever. And then the rest of the boat was like, seating. So you could go up on top deck and eat outside. You could eat inside on some of the decks. It didn't go anywhere. It was moored, and it never sailed. But it was just cool because you would eat lunch in the Riverboat McDonald's, which was very unique. And then later on, years later, there was a Riverboat Burger King about 2 boats down. That didn't last very long, but there was a Burger King. Now, also what you could do on the riverfront, um, and we would do this some years instead of going to the arch, you always ate at the Riverboat McDonald's. We never went to the Burger King. We always went to the Riverboat McDonald's for lunch. But some years, instead of going up into the arch, we would go and ride the riverboats. So there were little riverboats that were kind of like the Liberty Bell at the Magic Kingdom, but not as big. Actually, we did this with Scott Gardner's family over Memorial Day weekend about 2 or 3 years ago. There's these riverboat tours that you can do, and they tell you all about the history of the Mississippi and the Louisiana Purchase and all that stuff. They're called the Becky Thatcher and the Tom Sawyer. There's 2 boats, and they just take you out on the river. They go up the river, turn around, and come back. They go up a little north and come back. And we would do that and then eat lunch at the at the Riverboat McDonald's. Now, you might say, well, why aren't they there anymore? Well, if you know a little history in St. Louis, in 1993, we had what was called the Great Floods. And these were historic floods. I mean, there's even a town, if you do a little history, if you're a history buff, look up the town of Valmeyer, Illinois. So this was a town just south of St. Louis, obviously on the Illinois side, that was completely wiped off the map during these floods. It was close to the river. The floods came up. One of the levees broke, and we watched it. It was a Sunday afternoon when the levee broke and they said it was going to breach. We watched it from a helicopter live feed on Channel 5. When it broke, you could see the entire town just go under. Like you saw just farm buildings just get floated away. It was terrible. And that town moved. There's a new Valmeyer, Illinois now is what it's called. They moved a few miles away from the river and they rebuilt, but that town was destroyed. But because of that, the Riverboat McDonald's was destroyed. The Burger King was destroyed. A lot of the boats that were down there obviously were ripped off their moorings, crashed into some of the bridge moorings that are out, like the Poplar Street Bridge. The Eads Bridge was having some boats crash into it, which is a historic bridge from even the late 1800s, one of the most famous bridges in the United States. It was a mess. So 1993 kind of changed the landscape of downtown riverfront stuff and even Laclede's Landing. But yeah, we always went to the arch or to the riverboat rides, but you always ate at the Riverboat McDonald's. And I wish it was still there because I wish I could take my kids there. Another place that's uniquely St. Louis, you would always go 2 places, but I know we're going long, so I'm going to cut this short. But you'd always go to the St. Louis Zoo, which, look that up. It's one of the most famous zoos in the United States because it's free and it's amazing. You don't have to pay anything to get in. There are some paid exhibits, but it's free to go in and you get to do all kinds of stuff. It's got a cool little train. It's got a children's zoo. It's a really great asset in St. Louis. But the other thing that we always did, again, another free thing, we have a thing called Grant's Farm, and it's down in South St. Louis County. So it's in the county. It's down at the corner of basically Interstate 44 and 270 in St. Louis County. And this is owned by the Bush family, the Anheuser-Busch Brewery, like the beer company family, the Bushes. And what it was, Ulysses S. Grant owned it, the president. This was land he owned, and they have now turned it into the Bush Mansion is on this grounds, but you can't go to that part. But this is where they keep some of the Clydesdales, but they also have a huge animal collection there. So you can go and see like buffalo. You can see, just you can see camels. You can ride camels. You can, see zebras, and it's kind of like it's like a little taste of Kilimanjaro Safari in St. Louis. Because what you do is you get on these trams and they take you all throughout the whole farm, basically. It's called Grant's Farm. And it's, rolling hills and over bridges, and it's beautiful. But it's right in the middle of suburban St. Louis. It's crazy. It's right in the middle of St. Louis County. And it's just wild. But it's beautiful. Like some Anheuser-Busch commercials have been shot there over the years. This one little famous bridge from like a commercial at Christmas where the hitch, the Clydesdale hitch is pulling the beer wagon. It's there. You go right past that. You can see the mansion off in the distance when you're on the tour. But one of the cool things, and you go there every year because it's a free trip. You can see the animals and so forth. And they have animal shows, like bird shows, doing tricks, like sea lion shows and so forth. It's kind of like a zoo, but it's even better. But here's the thing. Okay, this wasn't the field trip part, but this is kind of fun for the adults. If you're ever in St. Louis, there's a section of Grant's Farm. It looks just like the Germany Pavilion in Epcot. I'm not kidding, because obviously, the Bushes were German. Everything was Bavarian. And there's this Bavaria section of Grant's Farm, and it looks just like the Germany Pavilion in Epcot. And they give you a free beer if you go in there if you're an adult. So I don't drink beer, but you can go in and get a free beer. So there you go. So and I know we're already at 40 minutes, so I'm gonna cut this short. But those are some of the things we did as kids for that's a St. Louis thing. That's a staple. If you went to school in the 80s in St. Louis, I guarantee you went into the Arch. I guarantee you went to a field trip to Grant's Farm. And I guarantee you that you had a lunch at some point at the Riverboat McDonald's. Now, here's the question. So, where you grew up, like what were the staples? If you lived in the beach, if you lived somewhere near the coast, did you take field trips to the beach? I don't know. Like, was that a thing? I mean, if you lived in Orlando or near Central Florida, did you go to Disney World for like some kind of an educational field trip, or Cedar Point if you're in Ohio? I don't know. So that I'm really, really curious, and I'd really like to share that for next week's feedback. So if you don't mind, when you have time this week, drop by patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Drop a few sentences. Let me know when you were growing up, what was that kind of staple field trip for your area? Like, where did everybody have to go as a kid in school that everybody growing up around you, like, oh yeah, we did that. No matter even, because like I went to a private school. We still did the same thing the public school kids did. So what did you do? But that's what we did. We did the Arch, we did the zoo, we did Grant's Farm, but everybody ate at the Riverboat McDonald's. Uniquely St. Louis, I think. So let me know. And thank you so much for your support. I hope you're having a great week and hope you're enjoying these shows. So until we get back together again next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. All righty.